the charter or the county code with regard to the county commissioners affect the judiciary in any way. So any wording that you read in those findings and recommendations of the Government Study Commission, where they even mention the corruption that's occurred over the past number of years in the courts, hopefully is not misleading you into believing that this charter will correct any of that went on in the courts. Talk now also about the transition team. The transition team is a very powerful concept, and in the charter it says that if this Home Rule Charter passes on November 2nd, that a transition team will be formed. The transition team will have 5 members of the Government Study Commission, the 3 current county commissioners, and 3 members of the public who are selected by the transition team. Now, the Home Rule guidebook, which I had cited earlier, had proposed that in the event there's a transition team, that the transition team consist of 3 Government Study Commission members, 3 county commissioners, and 5 members of the public. We see now that this Government Study Commission had believed that it might be a good idea to load up this transition team with a majority of members of the Government Study Commission, because when you see some of the powers now that they have, you'll see why they did it. This transition team will draft the Administrative Code, Personnel Code, Accountability, Conduct, and Ethics Code, and any other ordinances, rules, and regulations required by this charter or deemed by the Transitional Committee to be appropriate. That's right in the charter, section 12.14E1. So now these people that we voted to study our government and make recommendations for our government will be governing us. They come up with any ordinances that they decide are important or appropriate. They also recruit and recommend the most qualified candidates for the positions of county manager and clerk of county council, also the heads of any division or office provided for in the charter, and for any other key positions it deems appropriate. That's from the charter, section 12.14E2. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a good old-fashioned corporate takeover. This transition team, which will certainly have a majority, because they are 5, the county commissioners will only be 3, and that group of 8 will pick the other 5 that are on this transition team, or pick the other 3, that are on this transition team. They will have a majority. They will recruit and screen all applicants for every major position in every aspect of Luzerne County government. Now, all we hear about is how, wouldn't you rather have a government that's run by professionals, people who are educated, people who have experience, people who are eminently qualified. They call these people professionals, and they tell you that instead of having some political hack or some crony, they will, under this form of government, you are guaranteed that you will have professionals running your government. The reality is this transition team will choose whoever they deem to be the most qualified, whoever they deem to have the experience and education to run these departments and to run the entire county. I guess I could say this, that people who appoint cronies don't call them cronies, they call them qualified professionals. And I believe that this will be a case where we could end up with having this transition team completely take over Luzerne County government in one fell swoop. Let's talk about contracting. If any of you had seen the WVIA special that was on recently, there was an issue that came up over contracting, and Jim Haggerty just blatantly and flat out misrepresented what the charter said. And of course that format doesn't make it easy to be able to show him on paper that he is doing so. So I'm going to show you here. The Luzerne County purchasing policy currently says in section 2.7, any purchases over $7,500 this applies, I'm sorry, to any purchases over $7,500. It's called the formal purchasing process that we would go through. Any purchase over $7,500, you must advertise for bids. They must be sealed bids. They must be received by the controller, who obviously is an independent row officer elected by the people with his own solicitor. It's awarded by the elected commissioners at a publicly advertised meeting by a majority of those elected commissioners. Now, purchases between $3,000 and $7,500 require written quotes. So we have Luzerne County policy telling you in writing, and I could get you a copy of this if you like. It's certainly a public record. It is a policy of Luzerne County, Section 2.7. Any purchase over $7,500, formal bid. Advertised. Any vendor that would like to put a bid in on county business need only look to the paper, go to the Luzerne County website, find out which services or which items are out for bid, and put a bid in on it, and expect that if they provide a bid and they are the lowest responsible bidder, that they will get the bid because of this process. Incidentally, I think it's very important to note that Luzerne County's purchasing policy is actually stricter than what the county code would require. The county code requires that any purchases over $10,000 that you follow through this formal purchase process, and any purchase between $4,000 and $10,000, you get at least three written quotes. Now, let's see what the charter says. And if you have your copy of the charter, pull it out, go to section 6.09D, entitled Purchases Under $25,000. Or actually, that section describes what happens with purchases under $25,000. No advertising is required. So, anything over $7,500 in the county requires advertising for bids. Under the charter, anything under $25,000, no advertising required. There are no requirements for sealed bids. So, any item under $25,000, no sealed bids under the charter. Sealed bids are required under the county code and under the county's purchasing policy as it exists now. The controller has no involvement with purchases under $25,000. That's very important, because now you have this county manager who I described to you earlier, who I described to you has obscene powers, actually making this decision, him or herself, without any involvement of the controller, without any involvement at all or knowledge of the public, because he doesn't have to do anything, or he or she doesn't have to do anything with regard to going to a public meeting and asking for permission, even from county council. So this manager will be able to make these decisions on his or her own. He or she is appointed and is only subject to being removed with 7 votes out of the 11. The county manager approves and awards all contracts as long as money is in the budget. So, we talked about Section 609 being about contracts under $25,000, but the fact is, if you look in the whole Section 6, where it talks about all of the powers of the county manager, the county manager approves and awards all contracts as long as money is in the budget. So at no point, as once the budget is approved by county council, at no point, no matter how small, no matter how large, no point will there be a public vote on most all of the contracts that will happen in Luzerne County. Now, how is this an improvement? I could tell you objectively it's not an improvement. Right now, the public is able to see every contract as it goes through on every monthly agenda and watches the county commissioners either approve or not approve them. The county, the public is able to see and make decisions on whether or not to vote these same people in or out again based on whether or not they are making wise decisions with regard to contracting. The public has no direct control over the county manager, and if the county manager starts making bad decisions with regard to contracting, the public has absolutely no recourse other than to hopefully get rid of enough council members and put enough council members on council over a number of election cycles to be able to get rid of a rogue county manager. Another important thing that I failed to mention earlier is this proposed charter is proposing a similar, almost identical form of government to that of what exists in Bell City, California. If you Google Bell City, California, you'll see there that a county or a city manager and a city, I believe, assistant manager had walked away with hundreds of thousands of dollars that the public and council had no idea they were taking until it was too late. Google that and you'll see that not only was that form of government not the cure for any ills that may have existed in Bell City, but it actually created an environment by isolating that county manager from the voters. It created an environment that permitted the type of corruption to occur that did in Bell City. This threshold, this $25,000 threshold, also applies to services. It doesn't apply to insurance contracts, but the reality is, in Luzerne County, we've recently saved a few $100,000 by putting our insurance services out for bid. That would, of course, the insurance services, there are provisions under the charter that deal with insurance services. So insurance services, this threshold will not apply. But the threshold does apply to services, legal services, other professional services, consultants, whatever this county manager, as long as the county manager had money laying around in a budget, the county manager could, without putting out for bids or RFPs, which is requests for proposals, would be able to have the sole authority to make decisions on contracts under $25,000, even for services. Now, this is where Jim Haggerty tried to spin this, and this is where Jim Haggerty misinformed the public, not only at the WVIA, but also, I believe, recently at our Bar Association meeting. Jim Haggerty said that I was incorrect and that the charter didn't say 25,000, that I was mistaken. It actually said 2,500. Well, the area where he's getting the 2,500 from is that in the charter, section 6.09e, if you could take a look at that if you have the charter with you, it says that purchases between $2,500 and $25,000 require only 3 written, telephonic, or electronic price quotes. So, whereas the county code and the charter, or county code and county policies require 3 written quotes, so we could actually look in a file at some point and say, hey, this person contacted these 3 different businesses, they gave us quotes in writing, we went with the lowest quote. This policy, this charter's policy, only requires telephonic quotes. So this county manager doesn't even have to get written quotes. The county manager could just go on the telephone and write some notes and claim, oh, I called up so-and-so and they told me it would be this much. I called 2 others and they gave me this price. It just so happened this one is the lowest quote. And there will be no actual written record at all of this process or of these quotes, other than maybe, if we're lucky, there would maybe be some notes from the county manager. This system will shut the doors again, as they used to be, to vendors all across Luzerne County. When I first came in 2009 and we started enforcing the county code strictly, started enforcing the county purchasing policy, started putting things out to bid that we weren't even required to put out for bid, there were vendors that we had contacted and asked them to submit bids on different services or different items, who basically said to us, why would I waste my time? I've done that in the past and we were never able to get the bid. This would be a tremendous step backward, because this would, in addition to the fact that the county manager is isolated, in addition to the fact that none of these things will ever go on an agenda at a public meeting, now they are empowering this county manager with the ability to basically say that he or she called on the telephone and got a few bids and went with the lowest. This is a step backwards.